A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Is it possible to learn this power?
Not from a Jedi.
Ocean man, take me by the hand, lead me to the land that you understand. Ocean man, the voyage to the corner of the globe is a real trip.
Hello everyone, my name is the Fisherman and welcome back to the show. In this video we will look into forming the Dutch Republic, or better known as the Netherlands. This will also give you the Je Maintiendrai achievement, which is cool. Regarding the contents of this video, I will first talk about the opening moves in the independence war against Burgundy. Then I talk about the national ideas, and in the last segment I will go into the war against England and switching to reform and the actual forming of the Netherlands. So I was really looking forward to this because the Netherlands has interesting mechanics and is a real trade and colonizing powerhouse. So a note ahead, this video will contain a lot of compressed and sped up footage, but don't worry, I've kept the important developments on the normal pace, as you might have noticed is my style by now. So first things first, interact with your estates, get their influence above 80, take a general from the nobility and claim the monarch points from the nobility and the clergy, put your monarch point focus on military. And since we start out as Holland and we have a pretty solid economic basis, we can even hire an advisor, which in this case was the inflation reduction advisor, since this helps with future loans we are going to take anyway. Let your merchant navy collect in the English Channel, which is your home node, and then finally build up the force limit or just go 1 or 2 above, since we will be fighting Burgundy pretty soon. These steps should actually always be the first things you do when you start a run or a game, because this will give you a proper start. So as you could see from the highlighted bit in the beginning, there are some requirements to forming the Netherlands, and one of them is a couple of provinces. And the provinces we need are Amsterdam, Den Haag, Zeeland, Breda, Gelre, Utrecht and Friesland. Once you form the Netherlands, you are also removed from the Holy Roman Empire, which has both its benefits and disadvantages. The most important one is that the emperors will no longer mingle in your affairs and you won't have to deal with all the HRE mechanics anymore. The disadvantage is that expanding into the HRE will automatically mean that Austria comes to protect both its subjects and its allies, since you are now classified as a foreign invader. Of course, if you have managed to keep a strong ally like France, things should be okay, but still it's good to keep this in mind. Another thing we need is admin tech 10. So although you should be able to get all the required provinces before 1500, it actually still took me until around 1550 before I was finally able to press the button. However, this was fine, because in the meantime you can of course prepare for other things like colonial adventures, or in this run I decided to do something fun and invade England. Furthermore, in this run you shouldn't have to worry about the institutions or whether or not you will get them without developing your lands. Playing as the Netherlands means, well, you will get everything relatively easy. This isn't Granada, apart from maybe colonialism if it spawns in Iberia, which it did in my game. Needless to say, you shouldn't be afraid to develop your lands anyway, since the Netherlands has some nice modifiers for this, and it will generate you even more juicy trade and tax dollars, which you will need to keep your economy rolling. So, as you might have noticed, as Holland you start as a vassal of Burgundy, so you will need to fight for your independence first. You can ask France and Austria for independence support, which will give you the majority of the times, France in particular, so that should not be an issue. An interesting thing that I found though was that if you wait too long before declaring the independence war, you will, while being supported, Burgundy could decide to release you. Well, that may sound nice at first, it's actually a bad situation, because defeating them in a war will give you the independence, money and a province like Breda or Antwerp. So, and it automatically allies you with the nations that supported you, so that's a way better position to be in than being a released vassal. And well, as you can see, the Blue Baguette decided to pay off my debt, which was really generous of them. In this run, surprisingly enough, France did not help me at first, but England and Castile did. With Castile I was quite surprised, to be honest, but keep in mind to check Burgundy's enemies and rivals, since those will be the ones that will likely support your independence in the first place. Preferably we want all the Dutch culture provinces, but almost all of them are part of the Holy Roman Empire, which is a very coalition-sensitive region. So we're going to need all the diplomatic reputation we can get, and you know, hiring a diplomatic reputation advisor is therefore advisable. Of course, you could go for diplomatic relations if you want, because you will be sending your diplomats around anyway, in order to calm down angered nations and prevent coalitions. And maintaining good relations with the emperor is also important to dodge those unlawful territory claims that he will likely send you every 5 minutes. If you time it so that you declare the war and are able to arrive with your army before the tick of the new month, it is likely that the AI hasn't activated the fort properly yet, so then you'll have an easy siege on Antwerp, giving you an extra defensive line, and while you wait for your buddies to help you out, and it allows you to easily siege down Breda in the meantime. You can also activate the defensive edict in your own lands, giving Den Haag and The Hague a nice juicy boost. When the time came to select a naval doctrine, I chose the merchant navy. That's always nice, I guess. This gives you the extra ship trade power modifier, and it makes it easier for you to grow in the English Channel, which is your main trading node anyway, one of the richest in the game as time progresses, so you'll want as much influence in there as possible. In addition to having a strong trade fleet, upgrading the trade ports in your provinces like Amsterdam and others that might fall into possession, such as Antwerp, is also a good idea to boost your trade and thereby your economy. In the peace deal with Burgundy, as you might have noticed by now, I had to look what the possibilities were, but as you can see, I opted to take the independence, of course, and Antwerp, which is just great to have. I gave Picardy to England because at the time I thought I needed to watch out for France, but later we will see that it is actually England who will be going to war with mostly. Taking more than Antwerp, well, it was not possible due to the high aggressive expansion provinces within the empire. That's why forming the Netherlands is rather slow, because you're only able to gain the required provinces at a slow pace due to this high aggressive expansion. On a side note, as you may have remembered from my Granada game, and as you could also see a couple of seconds ago, I activated my Golden Age. For these kinds of achievement runs, it's my preferred way to go. I think those bonuses help out a lot, really, and they help out most in the early game. So now we will look at the national ideas and some idea groups and some of the synergies that are going on here, that could be going on. So normally you want to be balanced. So the first 3 idea groups should be one of each monarch point category. That will also allow you to get the most diverse group of administrative policies that you can then employ once you finish those idea groups. I have opted to take offensive ideas first, as this synergizes really well with some of the Dutch national ideas, like, you know, for example, the siege ability, stacks. And since money will not really be an issue if you play in the Netherlands, you will be relying on mercenaries mostly anyway. Thus making defensive ideas less of a necessity as when you were to play, for example, Granada, or countries that are really that have a poor economic basis as well as sort of low manpower. After that I took exploration ideas to get that sweet juicy colonial money, and as well as a little historical railroading, because, well, after all, we're playing Netherlands, so you could have guessed. As you noticed, I took economic ideas, but that was because I feared that I would need some external intervention to fix my economy. But as the expansion in the British Isles was more successful than I had imagined beforehand, I became the top dog in the English Channel, and which is one of the end nodes for trading, the other one being Genoa. So all the money in the world will eventually be flowing towards this node if nothing significant happens upstream. So even though you might not be having a huge colonial empire or do not wish to have one, you should still try to become the biggest trading power in this node. However, as it became clear that my economy would do just fine on trade, I decided to swap out the economic ideas for expansion ideas to get more colonists and rev up the colonial revenue stream. So in the end, I think after this I should take trade ideas, and I think Reddit and the community will hate me for this, but I think that in the end taking naval ideas is a good idea as your second military idea, because you will want to maintain that maritime supremacy. So I think those things stack really well. At least you should try it out. I mean, just reload the save if you want to, or you could just try it out in a game. I think it has some nice, there's some merits to this. Now we can turn to the England invasion, as you might have already gotten a taste of it. I decided to try something different for once, also to showcase to you that one really fun option that you have as the Netherlands for perhaps more Europe-centered game. Because you know, traditionally the Netherlands is really trade focused and colonization heavy. So I noticed that England was at war with France and Scotland, and I had already collected all the provinces required by this time for to form the Netherlands. So rather than bide my time and wait until I could form the Dutch Republic, I decided it would be more of a fun endeavor to invade England and perhaps establish a foothold there. Doing so would also allow me to decrease the English trading power, as well as increase my own and become the biggest trading power in the trade node. So for this to work, and to have any chance of succeeding, we will need naval supremacy, because the English fleet is always really big. So therefore I think you need at least 5 or 6 heavy ships, which you can easily maintain as the Netherlands, because your economy is just really well. I had been building these ships throughout the course of the game. So combined with the French navy that was also active in the war, we managed to take out the English navy, and that basically crippled them for the rest of the run and allowed me to transport my troops from the mainland to the British Isles. In the end I succeeded in taking 4 English provinces, with London being one of them. So that was really nice, but of course by this point I was considerably in debt and I also had to deal with some rebels. Although I was afraid I might go bankrupt, but in the end I was not really in danger at all, so you shouldn't have to worry about this as well. Or these things worked out because the revenue increase that came with the new territories and provinces increased the trade and developing my lands a bit when I had monarch points to spare. The later wars against England were actually side wars that I declared on Liège and Flanders, and those really served the purpose of fighting England with the least amount of resistance, since England itself had by this point found a strong ally in Castile, but you can sort of work around this by just starting a war with a smaller nation that they have allied or guaranteed. So call on your allies, which in my case was France, and let the stomping of England begin. Rinse and repeat a couple of times until the entirety of England is yours. Now for the religion swap. As you can see here, we've achieved our goal. We have formed the glorious nation of the Netherlands. The Dutch Republic event will follow a bit later. But regarding the religion swap, the Reformation will also breaks out by this point. So not switching to either Protestant or Reformed as the Netherlands is not really an option, in my opinion. Those religions just give too much benefits, especially with your trade-heavy gameplay. Personally, I prefer Reformed as the Netherlands because of the trade boost it gives, with the press of a button, just such as it could give you stability or extra war effort. And when your religion is reformed, you build up fervor points every month, and depending on how much provinces you have and their development, and then you can spend those by activating 1 or 2 or even 3 of those boosts, which is absolutely great. As you could see in the highlight, we also established some colonies. The Iberians and the French have a head start in the colonial game, mainly because I was busy invading England, I think. Nevertheless, it turned out that Brazil was still free real estate, so I decided to recreate the glory of Dutch Brazil and begin our first colony there. Personally, I prefer to take the native assimilation as our colonial attitude, since it basically reduces uprising to 0, and that means you don't have to send troops over to your building, to where you are building colonies, and that saves you a lot of time and money and effort. Generally just makes for a more relaxing game. Well, there you have it, folks. Forming the Netherlands is actually less difficult than you might think, as I hopefully showed you here. And once you have formed, you have a really fun game ahead of you. Feel free to leave some comments. My name is the Fisherman. Thank you for watching the show, and I'll see you on the next one.